Stampers, this is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. Today we're going to be working on a sponged beach background card. This card right here. I made this for a class a while back, and some people couldn't make the class but still wanted to know how to make this card, so I thought a Facebook Live was a great example on how to do that. But I also made this card for a recent paper pumpkin alternative. If you don't recognize these pieces, the pieces are from our paper pumpkin, and the cards in the kit were okay, but I've recently joined a blog hop where we take the paper pumpkin pieces and we kind of like make alternative projects to go with it. So I made that card, and then there was a pizza box that went with it, which of course is not right in my fingertips. But anyway, we're gonna get, what I'm gonna do with that card is I liked the way the sun like reflected on the water, so we're gonna do that on our card today. I came in a little bit late because I want to show you. This is Pixie. Pixie is our new toy poodle. She weighs about 2.5 pounds, and I needed to make sure she had gone outside before we got started on our video, but I thought I would show everybody just how cute she is. But of course I can't get her to look at the camera, so we'll go back to our project. Okay, so we're down here on our project, and I need to get started. What we need is a piece of blueberry bushel cardstock. This is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I've got 2 pieces of Whisper White, and they're both 4 inches by 5 1/4. I use one on the inside and one on the outside. And I've gone ahead and I've die cut in advance the 3 little Adirondack chairs, and they're from this die set called Seasonal Layers. And if you can see, the little Adirondack chair is right here. This set coordinates with another stamp set, Colorful Seasons, and I like some of the messages in this, so we're going to use one of these sentiments on the inside of the card. But for our main beach design, okay, this is High Tide, and this is the stamp set we're going to be using. And there's a couple little tricks to the sand, so I want to be sure to show you that. You can sponge with either sponge daubers, or with this kind of idea, I prefer to use the Stampin' sponges, just because they're more forgiving, I guess, to the edges. I found that when I stamped with the sponge dauber, I mean, you can even see how there's that extra little round circle there? That's when the sponge dauber hit and was a little bit too, I don't know, defined, not really what I wanted. So when I did this one, this was all done with the stamping sponges. And these come in a round circle, and I cut them into 6 so that we can use them for multiple colors. Okay, these are the stamp sets I was mentioning that for the sand that I said was a little bit confusing, because you can see right here that has a little divot in it, and it does that on purpose because that, if you were to stamp the lighthouse slides right in there. It's that way on purpose so that the sand comes up around the base of the lighthouse. But if you don't need that, then we can use this other one in the middle and kind of fill that in, or we can take and just do the edges. And so if I look at this through my clear stamp, I can see that I'm hanging off the edge where that hole is. I was trying to angle it so that you don't see quite as much of that little divot that was in our sand stamp. Now, if you wanted this a little taller, or you wanted to fill in those pieces on the bottom, like I said, that's when this piece comes in. And you can just stamp along the top, fill things in. Oh, and that was in Crumb Cake. You can also do that in Sahara Sand. I think that's what I did on this other card. You would just continue stamping. And I'm doing this as like a second or third generation, means that you ink it up once and then you just keep stamping. So you can see that if I was to stamp this once full strength and then stamp this way, that's what we call stamping off. And it's a great way to get kind of multiple colors or multiple shades out of one stamp pad. So you can have like more than one pink or more than one green by stamping off. Now I want Seaside Spray. This is one of our wonderful new in colors. It works great for water, and so I'm going to use it for that. I'm going to bring in, these are, I don't know, waves, again from the High Tide stamp set. Okay, so that was our waves, and then what I'm going to do is take one of these little Stampin' sponges. I'm going to take the one I've used blue with, and I'm just going to dab over this, coloring in the background a little bit. Now, when I did that reflection, what I did was I brought in the color I did the sun in, and it was Mango Melody is what we're going to use this time. And so I just kind of picked up the base of where the sun is, and then I'm going at a diagonal. So I don't know if you can see this. It's a very fine kind of orange that's going diagonal down the middle, because we don't want it real dark. We just want a little bit of a light reflection in the water. And then we're going to go back to sponging the water itself. So I'm going to do more blues. And don't be afraid to turn your paper around. I find that I move my paper or my cardstock layers around a lot because I want to work where my hand is the most comfortable. So you don't always need to be looking directly, straight onto it. Don't be afraid to move it around. Now I'm keeping this all kind of on the bottom in the water area because I want to stamp the sun, and then I'm going to do the sky in Balmy Blue, which is a similar color but not the same. Okay, so I need the sun. That's again out of this High Tide stamp set. There is just a round circle. That's going to be our sun. I'm going to place that in there, and then I'm going to take that sponge and I'm just going to kind of sponge around the sun. And because it's the same color, I can overlap the sun itself and it won't make any difference. It's not going to affect it. And then I've got, like I said, Balmy Blue. I just scrubbed it on my grid paper just to make sure I didn't have the other blue still on my sponge. They're so close it probably wouldn't have made a difference, but you can also take these sponges to the sink and wash them out with soap and water if you really wanted to clean them up. Maybe change colors. I find that I kind of stay with my blues and greens together and my oranges and reds together, and then I don't have to worry about the fact that they stain. It actually helps me know which ones I'm using. So, and then I wanted a little extra sparkle to the sun. And so I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella. Wink of Stella is a glitter kind of. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just a really fine tipped, a little bit of a delay. There's a fine tip brush and it says push here, and what that does is it puts the glitter down into the bristles and allows me to just paint. And that allows me to add glitter precisely to exactly where I want it. And it's not quite as drastic or as impactful as Dazzling Diamonds would be, which is a loose glitter that we would put on with glue. Can you see it gives the sun kind of a little bit of extra sparkle? So then we're going to adhere our little chairs. My brain just works in order. I'm going to go red, white, blue. I don't know, it's just stuck in my head that way. Oh, and we forgot the little grass. I have some of this. We can stamp a few in the Mossy Meadow. And I'm doing all of my stamping before I adhere it to the card base, because just in case there's a little bit of an oops, I want to be able to flip it over and stamp on the other side. I love our ink pads because they are so easy to re-ink. We sell these little bottles of re-inker for relatively inexpensive, and they make my stamp pads last like really long time, because normally stamp pads will dry out and these don't. Stampin' Up used to make linen stamp pads and they kind of dried out a little bit quicker than we liked, so now they're done in a firm foam, and so they hold the liquid better, but they still flip it upside down so that the ink puddles on the top of the stamp pad so that it's nice and juicy. And if you look, I just put stuff all over. And then I'm going to take my spoon and I'm just going to rub it with the back of my spoon, pushing it evenly around. And if you look now, they stamp much darker. So that's just a quick and easy tip for our ink pads. You can also use this same re-inker to watercolor with. You can put it in a little watercolor palette, or maybe even the lid of the stamp case, add a little bit of water, or use our aqua brushes and you can paint with it. And we can also re-ink the markers. If you have one of our markers are fine tipped and then brush tipped. And on the brush tip end, if you take some tweezers and you just kind of pull this out, you can put 1 or 2 drops of re-inker right down into the barrel of the pen. Ooh! Put this right back in and you're ready to go. What I normally would do after doing that is I would, rub it back and forth, make sure that the ink gets evenly distributed, and then leave it sit for a while before I use it and decide if it needs a little bit more re-inker or if we're good to go. Also, you always want to store your pens this way because they're double-ended. And if you were to store them in a cup or upside, this way, then all of the ink is going to settle and only go to one end. But if they're stored flat, then they both stay wet, which is our desire. So now we're going to work on the chairs. And so I'm going to bring in a fine tip glue pen because it's really little on the back here. Now I could use my combo, but it might get me a little more than I'm prepared to deal with here because I don't want it to edge out on the sides. Now if you see, I did get a little puddle of an extra, digging down here for a piece of scrap. And I'm just going to rub that off of there, because I don't want too much glue. So I don't know if I'll show this to you, but I'm just putting just a little bit of glue. So you barely need to squeeze it. So I mean, it's glued all over, but the thread of glue that I laid down is very small. Now I know how these chairs are going to fit because I have an example in front of me already, but if I'm doing something in a set of 3s like this, and I'm not sure how they're going to line up, I would always do the center one first. So when I created my other card, I laid the white one down first because I wanted to know where dead center was. You can even put a little bit of a tick mark with a pencil or something, lay this in the center, and then you can do the other ones out because you wouldn't want to start too far from the edge, start laying them down and run out of room out to the side. So just a little tip on that. Okay, so now in order to adhere it to the card base, I'm going to go ahead and use snail. And again, you don't need to do it end to end. You can just put it sparingly around. I want it on all the areas, but it doesn't need to be. Looks like my screen froze on camera too, which is my cell phone. I apologize for that. So I've attached my little Adirondack chairs using the fine tip glue pen, and then I use snail adhesive to put the card front onto the card base. I'm sorry, sometimes technology frustrates the heck out of me. So I hope that you got a good enough glimpse at how I made this card. There, I got rid of the little preview. It's still frozen. I hope you like my little card despite our little freeze. That's our card. Like I said, I did the inside of this one. I know we ran out of film, we froze. But for this, all I did was I sponged a little bit of the sand on the bottom. You can use this is done with a sponge, or you can do the stamps if you like, but this is just sponge. Oops. There we go. You can see how lightly I've got the sky in there, and then I've got the sand in there. And then the Life is a Beautiful Thing is from that Colorful Seasons stamp set. I try to stick to one stamp set, but sometimes there's just like so many fun things out there, I can't stand it. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you later on today when my pre-order comes in if you'd like to see some of the new and cool stuff coming out in holiday catalog, or you can join me again next Monday for another Facebook Live project that we do here. So thanks for joining me, and I will hopefully see you soon. Bye.